All right, I am here with my friend Victor. He's in multiple Facebook groups with me, and so we've known each other for a while, probably about 7, 8 months. You would agree? Probably
Yeah.
about that. He's had a nice little road ahead of him when he first came into the group, ENFP, but now he's had a bunch of people reviewed a very good video, and I was even surprised when I saw it in the first place, and we're like, oh, this guy is SC as hell, and so we're like, oh, ESFP. Okay, because starter, good conversation starter. He's always very friendly in the group. I think most people really appreciate what he has to say about a lot of different things. Very informative, loves to read, and he is a cheery sunshine ball of light in the group to me. Um,
Thank
today,
you.
today, we were gonna have a big meetup, but apparently people didn't show up for some reason. I don't know what that is, and so Victor, of course, showed up, and we're going to talk about past and influence on our type. I've beaten my past like a dead horse in my channel and with other people in conversation. Granted, I have SI inferior, and so talking about myself is generally what I do. And so that's the way it is. And so I always talked about like how my upbringing influenced my type. You know, being an ENTP, but then getting the second label of the nice ENTP and why that is. You can blame it on a lot of different issues. My FE child is on roids, and I understand that. However, that does not make me non-systematic. It does not make me non-pragmatic. I am very pragmatic, and so you can't say, "Oh, he's an ESFJ because they're systematic," but ESFJs are more pragmatic.
Stereotypes.
Yeah, and so with me, I had a very strong influence from my religious upbringing as a Jehovah's Witness. I've been
Mhm.
knocking on doors my entire life.
Mhm.
Always was under immense pressure in public to always represent Jehovah and and his people. And so when it comes to Jehovah's Witnesses, for instance, when they're around non-Jehovah's Witnesses, they're supposed to be on their best behavior. So if you ever see one acting out, you can always call them out on that and watch the guilt and shame just like over and collapse them. And
Mm,
that's kind of mean, but you can do that. So if you ever want to be
that
SE
is
demon, like with
good
them.
to know.
And so,
Because w-
okay.
when I was up in Canada, for those of you guys who don't know, I'm part of the LDS Church. I'm a Mormon, an interesting kind of Mormon. And so Mormons have to serve a 2-year mission, and they send them out to wherever they go. And so when I was up there, I had this really mean Jehovah's Witness lady just coming up to us saying, why do you guys have 2 Bibles if there's only one? I'm like, great, you're going to show us Revelations 22:18 or whatever that's called. And she's like, yeah, you know what it is, and read it to me, don't add to these things. And I'm like, well, the Book of Mormon is separate from the Bible. But she was just like, no, that book is false and you make it up, and just yelled at us. And we're just like, oh, what do we say to her? Because, it's wearing the name badge and stuff. So I had to be nice, but I wanted to yell at her.
That's interesting you say that because we're definitely trained not to do that.
Right.
And so she's probably crazy, which witness faith is loaded with people who are insane
She flew
because
up at us.
everyone's accepted. And so a lot of people who have nothing will join. You know,
Hmm.
technically that's typically what religions are looking for, is those who are ignorant and who are vulnerable. And
Yeah.
so because those will actually be recruited. And that's interesting because Watchtower, they always said that too. Because the Mormons, they add the scriptures, and you have like the Articles of Covenants. You also have pearls of great price and all that. Because I studied with Mormons before in
Yeah.
my door-to-door ministry, and he had like the King James Bible of Pearls of Great Price, Book of Mormon, and
Doctrine and Covenants.
Doctrines and Covenants all in one book,
Yep. It's like
all
a big
combined.
quad.
Yeah, and to me, as a witness, I was like thinking, oh yeah, that's blasphemy because Revelation says this. But now, after I've left the witness faith and I look back, and I can see how hypocritical they are.
Yeah.
Because in all honesty, the Jehovah's Witnesses have the Watchtower magazine they hold in great reverence.
Right. Isn't
And
that kind of addictive things too?
it is. And but they use semantic games to get around that. Oh, this is
Mm.
not equal to the Bible. Okay, yeah, but if you don't follow what the Watchtower says, you're going to get kicked out and shunned by your family. Okay, and so yeah, you have to follow it, otherwise you're going to get kicked out and shunned. And so that's the
Wow.
hypocritical thing. And so it's just like, and at least Mormons, when there is shunning, but it's not really shunning.
No, we don't
And
shun.
well, it depends on how extreme they are in the family. But I,
Now,
I, I
now, if
have
the
heard,
members do shun, it's they do it on their own accord. But like the church doesn't say, oh, if they do blasphemy stuff, you have to shun them. No, that's not how we're supposed to work. But some members do that, and that upsets me because shouldn't be doing that.
yeah. And so witnesses, they obviously they shun, you're gone. And so it's just
Yeah.
like, and this is mother, father, brother, sister. Like
Hmm.
they're speaking out against the faithful and discreet slave, and so now you're no longer part of it. And so it's interesting that she would say such nonsense about Mormonism, for instance. And granted, I don't want to get on a biblical conversation here, but
Yeah.
every religion cherry picks from the Bible. I have yet to meet a Christian that follows it entirely. I've been studying the Bible my entire life. I know it like the back of my hand. Unfortunately, waste a lot of time doing that. But uh, yeah, you have to pick and choose, because it's. I've made a video about this. It's not. It doesn't work in Western civilization. And so it's like whatever. And so what we're gonna. I've totally gone on a side tangent, which is fine. But
Yeah.
yeah. So as an ENTP who was forced to knock on doors, you had to be the best example in public. And so everything was about, are you drawing attention to yourself in a good way, or are you drawing attention to yourself in a bad way? And so with witnesses, you're literally indoctrinated on a regular basis to always be
Mhm.
ready to spread the message. And so everything's always about kingdom evangelization. I mean, being evangelizing. And so that's kind of how I am. And so it's just like always had to be nice. Uh, and also being upraised in that, obviously TI parents not really useful, because why do I need to do things on my own? I'm told what to do. So there's no reason for me to process things on my own. Everything religiously, at least, is given to me spoon fed. And again, if I don't accept it, you get kicked out and shunned by everybody you know. And so it's like that kind of mindset of that much pressure on you at all times changes the way you are. And
Yep.
so and then and so how would an ENTP deal with that, who's pragmatic and systematic? They're going to really develop their ISFJ side.
Okay.
And so ISFJ side, super FE, super SI, any is useful. And I look back and I can see where I used it in my day-to-day life, but I'm not like the typical, like, let's be abstract all the time ENTP all the time.
Hmm.
But that
Yeah.
doesn't change my type.
And funny, the thing is, the leader of my church, President Russell M. Nelson, I believe he's an ENTP.
Interesting.
He
Yeah,
was,
I think we make good ministers if we want to be, but
yeah. When he was younger, he used to be a world-renowned heart surgeon, and so he actually performed the first open heart surgery in the state of Utah.
okay. That doesn't sound ENTP like, but okay.
I don't know. Like I said, I suck at typing, so I I still gotta
I'm not
learn.
saying
But
they can't learn, but that's typically speaking, when I think of surgeons, I think of STPs.
hmm, okay,
Uh, when you think of surgeons and dentists, I think of ISTPs, ESTPs. But I'm not absolutist on this. I'm not saying it could be an ENTP. Anybody can be anything.
right.
We're talking about occupation. I don't know if he was really encouraged to go the doctor route. Maybe his father's a doctor. There's a lot of
I don't.
encouragement from family. I mean, SI inferior will be like, well, my parents really want me to do this, and
Hmm.
this is my responsibility, and so I need to be a doctor so I can make them proud.
I
Uh,
didn't know if that was his choice to be a doctor or not. I just know that like he was told, do not operate on the heart, and then he's like, I'm gonna find a way, and then he figured out some technique to get blood flowing from the heart into some machine, and then came up with a technique on how to do the heart surgery stuff. But then ever since now he's like 94, but still really healthy and strong. And he totally like changed up a lot of the structure of the church, which made me think ENTP, because
yeah,
before the Mormons used to meet for 3 hours on Sundays, and then he changed it to 2 hours, and then just kind of restructured the way the members do stuff in their wards, their congregations. And
just curious, what year was this when this happened?
When he changed that, I want to say, oh shoot, I don't know, 2018, 17.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Because witnesses changed their format, I think, in 2008
Oh,
to that very thing. Just so you know, and
oh,
the two religions kind of run side and side and run things very similar.
I bet.
Um,
Who's the witness leader? Like, do they have like a top leader?
no, they no longer have an official president. They used to. That ended in the 90s.
Oh,
So now you have a governing body of member, and currently right now there's 8. That number is not set in stone like Mormons. I think they have to have 12.
yeah, 12 apostles, and then the first presidency has 3, so it's a total of 15.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was just 12 guys and then one was the president.
No, no, it's like you got
Okay.
the president and you got his counselors, which that's 3, and then there's the 12 apostles.
Okay, so
So
15 total. Interesting. Okay,
yeah.
that's good to know. Yeah, and so there was times when the governing body, I think in the 70s, in the 80s, there was like 17 of them. But like I said, I don't know what the system is. As a triple systematic type, it really bothers me when I look at the system because it's just like nothing makes any sense. And so it just seems really emotional based and just like, let's just do what we want. And so no one questions it, because why would you? Because you get kicked out and then you get shunned by your family. and so, and, uh, and so that's interesting to me about the system of that. Okay, so as an ESFP,
Hmm.
since we're on the subject of religion,
Yep.
and we mentioned, the affiliative nature of this, and I always found ESFPs to be pretty affiliative. Granted, they have the ISFJ shadow, which typically gets developed pretty young.
Hmm.
Would you agree?
Yeah, given him my upbringing, yeah, I totally agree.
And so if you're sitting at church all the time and you want to be a movement ESFP, that's not really going to work out.
No, that's where I struggle with. It's like paying attention. I want to like be doing something, so I'm either on my phone or I'm, doodling or it's that was my struggle going to church growing up. And my dad, well, he doesn't go to church anymore, but back when he did go, he would always tell me like, don't pull out your phone, don't do that. People are going to think that that's really immature because he's very affiliative.
That's also comes from religion influence about what everyone else thinks about you.
Right.
And so it's all
And I don't.
about putting that in that show, at least when you're around each other, because there's so much pressure to conform.
Right.
And he's foreseeing he doesn't want to deal with all the BS that comes with that. Oh, you're letting your
Hmm.
son on the phone at church. Don't you love God?
Right.
That kind of that kind of stuff. And so it's just funny whenever I listen to Mormons and when they talk about their upbringing, it's not much different. And so it's so funny. To me, as an ENTP who was very ISFJ focused, I was a pretty good boy. I've always was a good boy, and at church, and I've always had the ability. I guess that's SI inferior to just shut down if need to. And like before this, it doesn't bother me to process a load of information all at once in one setting if needed. It's not usually my choice, but if it happens to happen that way, I was fine. And so witnesses, for instance, have these things called assemblies. And they have the regional assembly, used to be called district assembly, and they're the huge conventions. I'm sure you've seen them before in
Oh,
major
yeah,
cities.
because they always knock at our door and they're like, "Oh, do you want to come to our big assembly convention thing?" And they hand out
Yeah.
those flyers, and I'm like, "No."
Okay. Yeah, they have one of those every year. It's 3 days long. It
Okay.
used to be 5 days long in my mother's day.
Is
Um,
that the convention where if the witnesses don't go, they get shunned?
you don't get shunned, but you definitely be judged. And
Okay.
there's a funny video by a YouTuber named Dubtown, Kevin McFree, and he talks about the 6 degrees of shunning of witnesses. And so there's always like the soft shunning. Like for instance, technically myself personally, I am not disfellowshipped or excommunicated, as you guys would call it. Technically, I am not disfellowship because when the elders came to me to talk to me about my life and everything, I blocked them. That's pragmatic as it gets. And so it's just like, I didn't even respond, block. And, it's just like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm not going to. And so it just blocked them. And so they have nothing of me saying anything, of confessing to anything. All they have is hearsay.
So
Or
are
what? Oh,
you? So you're not technically shunned, so your family can still talk to you.
technically, but they don't because of
Oh,
that reason.
dang, that's
And
hard.
so it's like maybe that's why my mom will text me once a month. That might be the reason.
Hmm.
Where she's technically not wrong. But if they ever saw my YouTube channel and knew about that, I'm sure that would change things. But
Yeah.
so, but I don't think they know about it. And I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they don't know
How
about
to social engineer ISFJs out of
it.
existence. That was a good video.
Yeah, and so that's funny about that. And so technically I'm not, but there's like different degrees of shunning, they call it
Hmm.
soft shunning. So if somebody's not going to church on a regular basis, and I'm sure LDS is similar. If you're going on too many vacations or you're not showing up to church right now, somebody's going to say something, you
Yeah,
know?
I kind of got soft shunned, so to speak. Like back in 2015, I lose track of my years nowadays. Back before I got married, met my wife and stuff, I went to what's called a singles ward. So for young single adults, I live in Salt Lake City now, but I lived in a small town an hour and a half north of here, working for a really crappy rocket company that I'm glad I'm not with them anymore. And so I went to singles ward over there, and then I just at first I went like every Sunday, and I took part, and I made what I thought were my friends. And then I stopped coming to church after a while because I dated a girl at the time and things didn't work out. And then I just kind of stopped coming altogether. And then a few months after that, like I came back and it was just really awkward. People just looked at me strange, like, oh, are you visiting? And I'm like, oh, I just came back to church. And they're like, oh, okay, well, you're welcome to come stay here. It was just really awkward.
Yeah, the
And
passive
then
aggressive thing.
yeah, I thought they were gonna be like, "Welcome back, Victor," welcome back to. But no, it was like after I got fired from that stupid company and moved back to Salt Lake, um, like most of them deleted me off of Facebook, and so I'm like, okay, so much for that.
Wow. Okay.
And so at that point, 2016, I'm like, I'm never going back to church. Screw this. Like, I believe in it, and I know the church is true. My church is true, but like, I'm never going back to like to deal with all this crap anymore. But my mom is like super strong in the church. I think she's an ESTP or ESTJ, one of those two. She's very like bossy. And then she's like, "You need to go to church. This is what we raised you to be." And so I went because my mom made me, and I just sat for like the first hour, and then I went home, and then I'm like, I don't care about dating Mormon girls anymore. And so I met my wife. She's Catholic, but she has really good values. And I guess being FI parent, I have to be with somebody that shares the same values as me. And she shares them like spot on. And so I'm like, I don't care what religion she is. She's a really good girl, clean cut, like, and so forth. And yeah, we fell in love with each other, got married the following year. And, but then, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, my mom then told me like, remember, the Lord gives you blessings, but he can also take them away. And
Yeah,
so
that's a misquote of the scripture: "The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh."
yeah, yeah.
And it's always funny when I hear that. And when Job was saying that, for instance,
Hmm.
Job was in the wrong, because he was blaming God for his problems, and he was
Yeah.
righteous and God was not. Granted, I don't believe in the whole parable to begin with,
Right.
but if you look at the context of that scripture, you would not want to be quoting Job in that sense, because Job was, at that sense, not a believer in God, at least.
Right.
Not least in that sense, as you're really quoting a pagan.
Hmm.
so so it's just like it completely contradicts what James says when under trial. Do never say that I'm being tried by God, because with trials and tribulation, God does not try. And so it's interesting, and to me that sounds more like an SJ thing that your mother said. But anyways,
Yeah, it could be like ISTJ something, or she could
yeah,
be SJ. I don't know what my mom's type is. I have to figure that out someday.
yeah, like I said, it's hard when you're typing family members, because you've seen them in all four sides.
Hmm.
And so when you're thinking about the four sides of the mind and it's someone as personal as your wife, your children, your mother, your father, and you've seen them in all angles, like,
Right.
well, maybe they're this, you can constantly switch back and forth. And so a lot of times it's always best to get someone typed from an outside perspective lens. I think so. Um,
Yeah. And so then I started finishing up the story that I started with the church thing. Like, yeah, I go to church every Sunday, but that's because I guess the bishop from my church, he's kind of like, yeah, okay, you know what bishops are. Okay. So yeah, the bishop of my ward is like,
yeah, I
oh.
know exactly what they are. Very
So Vic,
intimate basis.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so
I,
my
I,
what?
I was going to say something really inappropriate, but okay. I've
So
seen the underwear. Anyways,
so my bishop. Oh yeah, the garments we have to wear. Yep.
yes.
So my bishop is like, oh, Victor doesn't go to church anymore. I have an idea. I heard he's a pianist, and so they made me the ward organist.
Okay, cool.
And so that got me to go to church every Sunday now. But even then, I still go just to the first hour instead of the second. But then last week, they're like, oh, how come I don't see you the second hour? And I'm like, oh, I know I'm bad. Don't follow my example. And it just kind of got awkward. I'm like, should I go the second hour? I don't really want to. And then they got me involved with like, we do a choir that rehearses after church. And so now I'm the pianist for the choir as well.
Yeah.
So the church is like trying really hard to keep me busy so that they can get me to come. Otherwise, oh, what's going to happen to Vic? He's going to fall away.
Yeah, I'm really jealous of your guys' types, and especially your quadra,
Oh,
when it
why?
comes to leaving religions, for instance, and kind of doing what you want in religions, because you guys don't have the SI to tell you what to do, and you don't have the FE to tell you what to do.
Uh huh.
And so you see in my quadra, for instance, we're all about cults and religions, and let's get trapped. And so we're going to be SI dutiful, and we're going to be FE dutiful in that
Hmm.
sense. And so when I look at like the XJW community, it's loaded with ISFPs and ESFPs, loaded. Like
Okay.
there's like, I'm not putting up with this stuff anymore. I'm out, and they just left. And I'm just like, well, how do you just do that? And I see like my ESFP friends, for instance, most people know I was in a band in my early 20s, and I'm typing my friends, four of them, well, three of them were ESFPs and one was an ESTP, and they all left in their early 20s. I'm the only one that stayed. I like
Wow.
submissively went back, and like, okay, I'm sorry, let me confess my sins, let me submit myself to you guys
Oh.
and your dictatorial, status, so I can make my mom happy because she FB guilted me. She's an ISFJ,
Hmm.
and like I've always had that linger in the back of my head that I'm letting my family down. That's SI, I'm all of this pressure upon them. A lot of people don't realize ENTPs go through this. INTPs are like that too. I know tons of INTPs that are stuck in the Jehovah's Witness faith. And for the
Wow.
same reason. People are like, oh, aren't you guys so smart and stuff like that? That's nothing to do with anything.
Right.
This is not about intelligence. And so it's like, it has absolutely zero things to do with it. And so how do you think that growing up in this environment, and we're going to get into the Latino thing later too,
Uh-huh.
uh, made you more affiliative and thinking more about the right and wrong?
Oh gosh. Are you ready for a story?
Yeah, of course. We're both informative. Go for
Okay. So,
it.
uh, so back when I was, I think 15 or 16 years old or something, I went to an English speaking ward, and I loved it. It was great. We went on these super awesome trips, like to Yellowstone, then whitewater rafting, and then horseback riding, camping. Like we did a bunch of cool stuff. And then my parents decided, why don't we go to a Spanish speaking ward? And so we went to the Spanish speaking ward, and it sucked. Like I walk inside the room and everybody just looks at me strange, and it was just the most awkward feeling ever. And everyone was like talking bad about me and thought I was weird, and I'm just like, screw this. And
Yeah.
I get really distracted easily, so I can't pay attention for the life of me. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just sit in the back here during Sunday school or something, and then I'll do my physics homework for high school. And then the teacher calls me out like in front of everybody. There's like 30 of us in the room. And he's like, hey, you shouldn't be doing homework. You need to be paying attention. And then everybody just kind of gave me that disgusted look. And I'm just like, gosh.
Yeah.
And So then I graduated high school, and then we moved to. Oh no! Before I graduated high school, we moved to another ward. So like moved to a different house and went to a different ward, and it was kind of the same idea. The Spanish ward was like the people were good and all. My mom just became friends with everybody in the ward and became really popular. And then I'm just like, okay, this ward is really disorganized and nothing really planned out. And okay, these guys are going on a camping trip. All right, there's nothing really organized. Let's just wing it. Oh, okay, this person has tents. All right. And I'm just like, this is stupid. And but it still have my values that I still hold really dearly to me. And I started college and I wasn't into the whole fraternity party and drinking, none of that. I never liked any of that. And so I went to a dance because I wanted to meet new people. As freshman year, college year, I got really depressed because I just felt really lonely, I guess.
Yeah.
I just went to school and then went home. I had a lot of problems with my family, didn't get along well with my sisters at the time. And so life just kind of sucked. And so I'm like, man, I need to meet new people. And so I went to this dance at the what's called the LDS Institute building. It's where they teach like religion classes for college students. And everyone kept asking me, are you rushing for it was called Sigma Gamma Chi fraternity? And I'm like, what's that? They're like, oh, well, have you talked to somebody? And so then I ended up in an LDS fraternity.
Okay.
And I was 18 years old at the time, and most of the fraternity guys were returned missionaries. Because guys, Mormon, for those of you guys who don't know, Mormons have to go. They're supposed to go serve a mission for 2 years, and they leave at 19 years old, which now it's 18 years old, but at the time it was 19. So most of them were like over 21, and then we did like activities with girls, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm single, I want to meet girls, and they're like, oh, you're pre-missionary, right? And I'm like, yeah. I didn't know if I wanted to go on a mission or not. I'm just didn't want to go, but I kind of felt the cultural pressure to go. I guess that affiliative side of me that wanted to do the right thing and follow that Mormon path of okay, well you date and then you get married in the temple and so forth, and the only date guys that serve missions. So I'm like, okay, so I have to go on this stupid mission. All right. And so I went on a mission to Edmonton, Canada. I love Edmonton. It's a great place, and the people up there I met and stuff. But being a missionary sucked. There's too much rules and too much strictness with everything. I had really strict companions that didn't really let me do the things that I wanted to do. And I mean, they're great guys and all. I have nothing against any of them, and I still have them on Facebook and stuff. But man, they got on my nerves so much. Like one particular guy, I think he's an ENFJ, was just like really bossy on me, saying, I'm gonna pull rank on you and I'm your senior companion and you do what I say, because the missionaries, like the senior companion is the one that's in charge of the junior companion, which I think is really stupid. But like missionaries are supposed to follow this hierarchy of rules and
Yeah. Well, whenever you deal with like a high control group such as LDS, Jehovah's Witness, things like that, it's all about hierarchy.
right.
It's training you at a young age. It's just like the military.
Hmm.
Witnesses go through the same thing too. Typically, they all young men should be sent to Bethel, for instance, and that's where they like print books and stuff for
Yeah.
free labor essentially.
Mhm.
And you learn at a very young age about hierarchy and status and power and things like that. So it's kind of like it's interesting. You made so many different points there, and then you have fraternities too, which are essentially cults.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so I always laugh when I see fraternities and people think so highly of them back in their life, and they're like explaining what they did. I'm like, you pretty much just like had to like belittle yourself to join this thing and then follow a set of rules in your fraternity
Hmm.
for no reason. You essentially were fraternities are probably really encouraged in college because it makes people good citizens of America,
Yeah.
and that's the way it is. Now, were you born in the States? Were you born in Utah?
I was born in Venezuela actually,
Okay,
and I moved to the States when I was 5 years old,
okay. So, do
or
you
four,
remember
going on
much about
five.
that culture down there, or do you think it influences you at all?
I vaguely remember Venezuela at the time. I was only like this 4-year-old little kid, but like growing up, like we always had family parties and always had like Venezuelan food. Growing up, we have arepas, which
Okay,
is like
yeah, I know what they are.
okay, tortillas, right? Thick tortillas that are made out of corn dough. For those of you who don't know, And so yeah, I grew up eating the good Venezuelan food, and we always had dance parties. And both my from my dad's side of the family, we always got together with like my cousins who were all roughly around the same age group. And then my dad had a ton of siblings, and so it was just these big family parties with music and dancing and food, and miss these big family reunions. But that's how the Latino culture came.
Okay, did you grow up speaking Spanish in the home?
Yes,
Okay.
my dad was really strict on us. He said like Spanish, you can only speak Spanish at home.
How did that affect him though? Because I'm assuming he didn't speak English.
Well, my dad worked a lot of different jobs. So like he worked at a Savers. It's kind
Okay.
of like a thrift store kind of thing. And
Okay.
then
Yeah. Yeah.
he
Yeah.
got into water installation, and so he had a lot of clients speaking English, and so he was kind of forced to speak English outside. And so my dad likes to talk to a lot of people and interact, and so that's how he got to pick up the language really quick. Whereas my mom mostly stayed at home and she only hung around with like Latinos, and so her English didn't like she can speak and understand English, but it's not that good. Whereas my dad can speak it pretty fluently and well.
Okay.
And so yeah, at home we were like he was really strict on us. Like you can only speak Spanish at home. Actually, funny story, when I was in grade 1, they did this like test on us to see if we can speak English. And then the lady that was giving me the test was talking to me in Spanish, and I didn't want to talk to her back in Spanish. And then she's like, "¿Por qué no quieres hablar? Why don't you want to talk?" And I'm like, "No, no, Spanish is only for the house."
Oh God.
And
Okay.
she
Wow.
told,
Okay. That really instilled in you then. Okay. Interesting.
yeah. And so
Uh,
it felt awkward talking Spanish outside the house because as a little kid, I thought Spanish was the home language and English was the outside language. And so,
Interesting. That kind of reminds me of like some of my Indian friends who like they have a certain language for their religious ceremonies,
mhm.
which they're fluent in, but they don't speak it outside of that.
Wow.
It's like certain Catholics speaking Latin outside of Mass. That it just seems absurd to them.
Right. That's
And
how.
and so that's funny that you say that, and the installation like that of because typically children are going to be shadow focused, and so you'd be like, well, daddy says this, ISFJ shadow, I need to
Mhm.
follow this rule. And when I noticed that with ESFPs is let me know if this is any someone acronym, and you kind of already made this point already, where you grow up in your shadow so long, and then you kind of have like this, not a midlife crisis, but a quarter life crisis in your
Mhm.
20s, and you guys freak out, and then you like really get back into your ego because you've been in school, you've been in church, you've been at home, and no one's allowed you to use your NI inferior, and
Yeah.
just kind of like boom, and then ESFPs are just like out, good in the world, soiling their royal oats is what many people like to call it. As Is that have any kind of ring of truth to you?
Yes, absolutely. To, like I remember like Chase talking about another like he says he's an ENTP and he grew up in his INTJ shadow, so I was kind of on the same boat with my ISFJ shadow. And it wasn't until like 2016 or so that I really started to figure this whole thing out and started to live more towards my ego. And yeah, just growing up in a really strict religion, college, school, like you said. And but even then, when I first took the Myers-Briggs test for this mechatronics class that I took, and he wanted us all to take these tests, I was really depressed that semester. And I'm like, okay, I'll just answer these questions. And then I got ISFJ. I had no idea what these letters meant. And then the other guys on my team that we worked for, like to build a robot for a competition, got INTJ. And I'm like, okay, whatever those letters mean. And so I looked up the description. I'm like, okay, INTJs are this. All right, that seems to resonate with you guys. And I'm like, ISFJ, the counselor type and the duty based, doing what you're supposed to do. I'm like, am I really like this? Because I don't feel like I am.
Yeah, I mean,
And
definitely is an issue. Like, let me talk about the bishop that I was dating, and he's an ENTJ through and through. No ifs, ands, or but. He's
so
triple
this is the
pragmatic.
one that you're with right now?
No, 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 no. That's a different.
Okay, okay.
I can find my needs. It's not a problem for me. ENTPs are like radars. Okay, it's like boop, 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 and so it's just like I can be a double minority and still find silver and golden pairs, no problem, you know. And I was on OkCupid. It was pretty proficient about, you know, finding a type just based on profiling alone.
Wow.
But uh, he took the test and got ISFJ. Okay,
Wow.
so
The
let me tell you.
ENTJ got ISFJ.
Correct, and that's why I was laughing my ass off the whole time. I was just like, "This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen." But if you think about the societal pressure
Hmm.
of being in a very strict religion,
Yeah.
what are you good if you want to be sound like a good Mormon? What are you going to score as?
No, good point.
ISFJ, uh, you know, possibly ESFJ. But if that influence is really put on you, you know, let's just face it, the Christian religion really, really promotes ISFJs and ESFJs.
Oh,
Really does.
absolutely.
You know, you have the argument that Jesus was an INFJ, but yeah, but we're supposed to follow Jesus' example. Jesus set his own example.
Hmm?
You know, Jesus did what he wanted to do. We're
Oh, yeah.
supposed to follow what he wants. Okay, that's a completely different dynamic. You know, and
Right.
so,
He started what he wanted, and then the rest of his followers do what he wanted.
and that's
Come unto
duty.
me, for I am meek and humble, and
Correct.
wish
And
I
so
knew more of the
that's
Bible.
going to gravitate towards high SI, high FE.
Hmm. Which I am neither of those.
And so that is the, you know, symbolism of a good Christian is those two types. And so emulating that, just like myself, you know, granted I'm not ISFJ, but that influence is always there.
Yeah.
And so, and it made a lot of sense. And people always like, wow, Matt, when you're at church, you know, you're so quiet and you just do your work and you just keep to yourself and things like that. And then I go out in the public and I'm with my friends and I'm like, you know, and everything's fun when I'm comfortable around that. But I was never comfortable at church.
Hmm.
No, 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 no. And so SI and fear is just like, okay, you know, let's go over here to this part. And I'm, you know, working with the books, or I'm organizing sound or setting up church, make everything's running well and things like that. And I hate small talk. And so church talk to me always drove me insane because it was endless banter of nothingness.
Hmm. Yep.
And it was just talking about nothing. They're like, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. Oh, did you like the sunny weather today? You know, and it's just like, okay.
Yeah, the superficial chit
It's so
chat. It's like,
superficial because, like, are you really okay, or are you? And I always answer questions. I always answer that question with the truth, and people hated that. Oh, I feel like crap today, but I'm here. You know, or you know,
oh yeah, my favorite's like, how are you doing, brother? And I'm like,
yeah.
oh, I'm doing crappy. And then they still smile and they're like, that's good. I'm just like, all right.
So to me, it was always funny to me because I always thought through it. I'm just like, this is all nonsense.
Hmm.
But I made a video about this, about why each type I think leaves and why they leave. And T's, I put up with that stuff. And I'm going to talk about this because I'm going to actually interview Robert and hopefully Diasis, who are both pragmatics, who are also XJWs
Okay.
in the group.
But Robert
And,
Moreland?
or more, yeah, he's XJW.
I didn't know that.
Really? Oh, yeah. Well, SI Demon doesn't talk about his past.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna drag it out of him, okay? And so it's gonna happen. And well, NTs will put up with it, with all the
Mhm.
affiliative nonsense, because we think it's true. So as soon as that truth goes out the window and is no longer true, the nonsense absolutely irrelevant. And so to me, I just considered it like my cross to bear, putting up with the affiliative stuff nonstop.
Mhm.
Whatever. Jesus suffered, I can suffer too. You know, and you know, as NT, you know, high intuition anyways, it's all about willpower, and NI nemesis is like, yeah, let's keep going, bro, we got this, you know. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll carry the cross, you know, and I will suffer in this because I want to live forever.
Yeah.
Okay, then, you know, when that all like fell over, you know, and TI parents took an existential crisis, like, well, this is what you believe is true your entire life and now it's not, and you're like, okay,
Mhm.
you know, what am I going to do, hang out? No, I'm out. Bye. And
Yeah.
when it comes to SP's interests, you know, they're willing to sacrifice pragmatism, what they want to do, if there's an interest involved, you know.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times SPs can come off more affiliative because they're shadow focused through the upbringing in the United States or whatever,
Hmm.
church, school, whatever, parents bossing you around. You're literally your future depends on you being submissive
Hmm.
at a very young age. So SPs learn that way. But as soon as they figure out there's nothing in it, they leave. And or it's not a win-win,
Hmm.
you know. And so there are SPs that perhaps find the interest in
To
their
be
faith or
honest,
whatever.
I went to single sports so I could meet girls.
Yeah,
Kind
it's
of
an
very
interest. There you
pragmatic
go.
interest of me.
Yeah, most definitely. And I hear that story all the time from SFPs, who would leave XJWs. Like, I couldn't stay in the faith because, well, in Jehovah's Witness faith, you can't have sex till marriage. I know Mormons are like that, but
Yes.
I think there's a kind of a roundabout way of getting through that.
Not really. Like, supposed to can't have sex until you get married. That's what I've always been taught.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I know that for the bishop I was dating, all of his children got married while they're going to BYU, which
Mm.
I've been told is normal. And like, so you're getting
Oh,
married
they
at
get married young. Yep.
in 2021 and you find your wife or your husband in BYU,
Uh-huh.
and then you get married and then they have literally couples dorms,
Yep.
which is probably the only major university that has that.
Yeah. University of Utah and Utah State also has married couple dorms as well. But it's like for families, for like young families. But
Yeah,
like this explicit like young couple dorms is, I think it's just a BYU thing. I'm not really sure. But
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, so you have that interest there. And so, when I'm thinking of SPs and thinking of why would you submit your pragmatism, because it's best for my family, it's best for me, I can do this for them, or I'm going to get sex, or I'm gonna
No,
you
like
know
the
you know
return missionary guys that's been
yeah,
gone for 2 years, they come back, they're horny as hell. Like
yeah,
they want to get married really fast so they can do it. And so that's why I think they get married so young so fast.
you're right. No, Jehovah's Witnesses are no different. And so
Yeah.
it's like most witnesses got married before 21,
Wow.
um, usually, because it's in their best interest to do that, because and even in Mormonism, also masturbation is not allowed for the most part. That's
Yeah.
considered a sin. That's not.
Every guy I know does it.
It's the same thing in witnesses. And like,
Yeah.
I was one of those weird witnesses that would not. For a long period of time, my friends would make fun of me because I was just so like pious and
Mm.
like. And so like I always consider that like overcoming, like, I don't know, like discipline or something weird. I don't know. I was really weird then. And
A lot of willpower.
willpower, it's just like strengthening willpower. And
Well, your SI.
yeah, and so it's just like, yeah, and my friends make fun of me because most of my friends are SPs, they're like, oh, you
Mhm.
don't have to follow that. But they get married young. With Mormons though, you guys seem to also procreate young too.
Yeah, they teach us like start families. Like actually on the missionary exit interview, one of the questions is, will you commit to starting a family? And so now it's like get married and have kids right away.
Yeah, that's a bigger difference between witnesses and Mormons. But now it's flip flopping. Now that witnesses are going backwards in their numbers, and I think LDS is too, but
Yeah.
or stagnating at least. Now they're more encouraging having children. In the past, witnesses discouraged having children. It was considered irresponsible because the end was so close. It's like,
Wow.
why do you want? Because witnesses believe that the government's going to turn on religion and arrest everybody, and things like that. And so why would you want to be in prison arrested if you have kids? How your faith is really going to be tested then, because they can have your children to hold against you.
Hmm.
And so you see a lot of older witness couples that have been married 40, 50 years, didn't ever have children, you know, didn't plan on
Wow.
growing old in this world. And so they have no real retirement. They have no children to take care of them, and so you're literally
Unbelievable.
just old on Social Security and you're just like, well, what now? And it's a huge issue right now.
Wow.
And so that was always I noticed about the difference between LDS and witnesses is like, in LDS, I've noticed a number of 4 kids is the ideal number.
Yeah, that's usually what they go for. That's how much I would like to have, but my wife only wants to stick with 1 or 2, maybe at the most.
Okay. And
Yeah.
interesting. And so was that the case in the Latino Mormones section or what?
Gosh, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of the same in
Yeah.
many respects, but since most of the Latino Mormones are like converts from Catholics and other, yeah, most likely Catholics converting to Mormons, then they don't quite have that strict culture that the white Utah Mormons have.
Yeah. And I've always, I mean, I've told you this before off camera. I was in Spanish for 4 years, and there's definitely a different Spanish culture versus the white culture in Jehovah's Witness even.
Yeah.
Granted, all the teachings are the same. You have the same books, and for the most part, you know, this and that. But there's usually a lot of leeway in cultures of what's right and wrong and what's okay. And there was a different also in whether or not I was in 2 different Spanish congregations, and one was Mexican dominant, one was Cuban dominant.
Oh wow.
And so that's a huge difference in culture.
Yes.
And so in the Cuban congregation, a lot of things, like give you an example, Cubans love to drink alcohol.
Hmm.
Okay. And I know in Mormons, you can't drink alcohol at all anyways.
Nope.
Coffee and tea is all gone. So I'm sitting right now on camera, but,
Oh, oh,
uh,
you're good. You're good. I don't care.
uh, I know you don't. You're a Jack Mormon. Anyways, tea critic label, bam.
Bam.
And so when it came to Cuban congregations, for instance, you can drink alcohol at a party while you're dancing and salsa whatsoever. In the Mexican congregation, no. Alcohol is a big no-no.
Hmm.
And I understood, and a lot of people don't realize how conservative Mexican culture really is. If you really compare it to the other Latino culture, um, at least I should reiterate that. If you're from Mexico City, that's a different culture all entirely. If you're from Guadalajara, different culture all entirely. But if you're from these smaller country towns, which a lot of immigrants are from, you know, um, you're looking at the culture much like Appalachian culture in America or country Utah culture, you know, for someone to understand this. Montana culture, you're looking at more of the conservative country like types, but they're
Hmm.
from Mexico. And so that comes up here. And so they're more, you know, let's follow what the Bible says, let's more follow this. And alcohol was wrong in that congregation, but it was okay in the Cuban congregation. This is taking way too long to explain that.
Informative.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's interesting to me because we were talking about just difference in cultures and influence, and I just look at systems. I could care
Mhm.
less. And people like realize, oh well, what do you think about this right and wrong version? Huh? Irrelevant. I don't care if it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you what they do. I'm not
Yeah.
offended by it in one bit. I don't care. You know, I'm just telling you this is the system in place here, and this is what people are doing. So that affiliative notion and things like that. And so then you look at this culture, that affiliative notion is there. There's just different systems all over the place, and
Hmm.
different systems in play. To me, they're based on nothing. But to other types, I have to accept that it's not based on nothing. It's just based on something I don't understand. You know, because to me, when I was a Christian, when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I thought in very black and white terms.
Hmm.
And so when you think of NTs, and Chase mentions this many times, if it was NT government ran, it's very totalitarian. And that's the way we are. We're very
Yep.
robotic in that sense. These are the rules. This is what you follow, and that's it. You know,
Hmm.
your emotions are irrelevant. You know, whether or not you think it's right and wrong is irrelevant. We're just having a process, and it's very cold. It can
Yeah.
be that way. It can be very cold. And so when I was a witness, I was very cold. And so, granted, I was nice and happy at your face and stuff like that. But for the most part, I didn't think
I could
most were,
picture you being that really happy Jehovah's Witness at the door. Like, hey, how you
hey,
doing?
how are you doing? My name's Matthew. Have you ever thought about why the world is going the way it is?
Oh
You know,
yeah.
and so it's just like, sure, you know, and you're like, everything's about when it comes to religion, we have an acronym called FOG,
Hmm.
fear, obligation, guilt. And so most sermons are all based on those 3 things. And then I look back on my sermon, even at the door, knocking on someone's door. What do? You bring up something negative happening in the world, fear.
Mm.
Okay, this is what God has to say about it. Obligation. What are you going to do about this? Guilt.
Oh,
And so like bam, 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 you know, and so those are always the three processes when it comes to any kind of faith. And that includes Buddhism for that matter.
and to me, that's just not right. Like, because I believe like you should do things more out of faith. You know, give people hope and make them feel more motivated to do it rather than like coerce them into fear. You're a sinner, repent, or you're gonna go to hell. Rather
And
than come unto Jesus and have faith unto him, your life will be better. Like I wish religions would teach more that way, but I guess they don't.
what happened was Paul came into the existence, and I think Paul's an SJ, and so that kind of happened. But anyways, that's a whole nother subject.
Okay.
Because the Pauline scriptures kind of turned it into a cult, essentially. But
I can see that.
and made it all systematic, affiliative, and all that nonsense. But because that's definitely not what I thought Jesus did. But whatever.
That would be a cool how to type session, right? Type these religious people, Paul and Bible and
I mean,
Joseph Smith.
the problem with Joseph Smith, I'm supposed to be an ENFP.
That's what I heard too, but I don't know.
Yeah, Joseph Smith's supposed to be an ENFP. Muhammad's an ENFP, and so is. And I'm going to talk about this with Robert. Also, Charles Taz Russell seems to be an ENFP too. And
Who's
so
that?
when he's the original cult leader of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And he was also a really, really good salesman. He owned a business of selling suits and made millions and millions of dollars at a very young age, and then took that money to start the religion.
Gotcha.
And if you listen to his writings, it's a whole lot of T.E. Child with Any Hero, and just like, this is possible, this number says this, and so this is here, and the pyramids are over there. You know, and it's like this huge storytelling where the truth is irrelevant 100%. And it's just like, but all these possibilities could happen, you know, and you can see it. And I don't want to bash Mormons. I love you guys. That's fine. But you can see a lot of just stuff just made up, you know, in the Book of Mormon. And the book's been revised, 4 times? But anyways, that's a whole nother side tangent. But it's just like, yeah, you see the ENFP there, and it could have came from good intentions. I'm told that Charles Taz Russell was a really nice guy,
Yeah.
you know, and everyone loved him, you know, and Joseph Smith, no difference. I think most people did like him. You know, you had to be a very charismatic, likable person to start a movement.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, where was I going with this?
That goes with like what Chase was saying with the philosophers, that they kind of lie in a way. They're kind of liars.
Yeah, they can be.
Like Elizabeth Warren, the so-called INFP that claims that she's Native American.
Well, that's T inferior. It could be true, so why not say it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and she's just trying to cheat the system that's in play. That's idiotic. You should really get into that school because you deserve to be there, not because you're an Indian. But that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're really claiming to be a university of the best minds, your ethnicity should not matter one bit. But you got to be PC. You got to have this nonsense. And so it's just like, you can't really claim that no more. You no longer have the best minds. You have the best minds of certain categories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a whole nother system again. See, systems,
very objective, logical systems.
And so, yeah, and so that's why, you know, ENTPs are all libertarians, because all the systems are stupid. But anyways,
I'm actually fundamentally a libertarian too. I'm neither for the right or for the left. I'm somewhere in the middle.
I get attacked by both sides, you know, whether Jesus freaks
true.
or from the far left. And so that's just the way my life's always been. I've always been attacked. And so it's like, well, you guys like to argue so much. I didn't argue. Someone started arguing with me.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like, I was just sitting here. And so I expressed my opinion. You didn't like it. So now it's my problem.
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, that's all. Man, I'm reading all these different things we can talk about. But okay,
right.
We're supposed to be talking about past upbringing and affiliation. Okay.
Okay.
So let's get out of religion and let's look at Latino influence.
All right. Latino culture influence.
Because although with you, it's going to be a little special thing, because there's not a whole lot of Venezuelans in the United States in comparison to other Latin groups.
Although that's changing really fast because Venezuela right now is going through a really like horrible crisis right now, and they've been
Yeah,
getting Venezuelans fleeing by the millions. I think they've got more refugees than Syrians.
I believe
So,
it, and that's fine. I like Venezuelans for the most part. I really like that culture.
mhm.
Um, but let's just face it, when you're talking about Latin culture in the United States, it's definitely dominated by Mexicans, which is a huge different,
Oh yeah.
very different culture entirely than Venezuela.
Oh.
And it's like we're talking oranges and apples here.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people, I'm sure you dealt with racist things like, oh, you're Mexican or whatever like that.
Yeah.
So people would probably just assume that's what you were.
I've been shielded though from it since I'm pretty white skin and most Latinos are like darker skin, brown. I kind of didn't get that discrimination
Really?
as
Growing
much.
up in Utah with like the most inbred white people ever? I don't know. I found that really hard to believe because like I to me when I go to Utah everyone looks the same.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
pretty white here.
it's very white. It's clearly all from the same tribe of people that literally came there with Brigham Young not
Yeah.
that long ago. And now there's millions of them and they've been intermixing with each other the whole time. To me,
Hmm.
that's what I get when I go to Utah. I love the state. Don't get me wrong. I think it's
Yeah.
arguably the most beautiful state in America.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
One of
it's
them.
a good state.
I would live there, and I have no issues with it. But that's something I have observed, and
It's a lot
again,
cheaper than California.
oh, well, that's not saying much. But the traffic got worse though.
In Utah? Yeah, there's a
Utah.
lot of growth out here. So many people are moving here from California and out of state. Like we have a silicon, like a mini Silicon Valley. It's called Silicon Slopes, like south of where I live. And that area has just been booming like crazy. Just a lot of growth and expansion. And my ENTJ cousin, he's a big entrepreneur, real estate guy. He literally said like wherever the Californians go, that's where I'm going to. He could just like foresee like, oh, if all these Californians are moving here, that's my opportunity to go sell them houses.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good way to look at it.
And he's like, I say, if I'm 32, he's 31. He's already a millionaire with a big mansion and 5 bedrooms, and
You say
that's
he's an
a good deal.
ENTJ?
Yeah.
That makes sense. They are really good real estate agents. Although I know you disagree with the Trump thing, but
Uh,
he's clearly an ENTJ. But anyways, uh,
subject to debate.
I I need you to find me one FE statement. Okay, you're trying to imply someone has FE child, and he hasn't said one ethical thing in his lifetime. But anyways, uh, but
No, to be honest, I'm actually starting to think now more he is more ENTJ like just at the things that he's accomplished in life.
yeah, it's a billionaire type, and I mean I don't know any ESTP billionaires. I don't.
He's
Um,
just so charismatic and knows how to engage the audience. That's why I thought, oh, Effie Child. And he just starts businesses on a whim and he takes all these risks and goes for it. But then at the same time, he's also very systematic. So now I don't know anymore.
yeah, no,
ENTJ, ESTP, maybe he's an ESTJ for all I care. I don't know.
he's a very ISFP focused ENTJ.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
That's what the thing is because he's always been in entertainment.
And Bernie Sanders, ISFP, everyone thinks he's INFP. So
Yeah, it's hard with politicians because they're fake.
yeah.
And just like let's bring it back to the subject again. I find it hard to type witnesses because they're fake.
Yeah. And same with Mormons too.
Okay, and so when I see Mormons, the stereotype is, "Hi, I'm always happy." And it's like, what the hell? Why are they always giggling? They're always giggling to me, and so it's just like, and I'm like, I think it's cute, but okay, whatever. And that's the stereotype. There is it's like, I don't. Did you ever see that South Park episode,
Mm-mm.
the Mormon one?
Oh, the Mormon one? Yeah, I've seen that one.
That's like from like 2001, I think.
It's been a
Dum
while.
dum 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 dum,
Oh,
and the kids are like,
smart, smart, smart.
and he's like, who? Joseph Smith was the prophet. Dum 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 dum. And anyway, it's just like, and he goes, "Who's Joseph Smith? Who's Joseph Smith?" And all six of them are all laughing on the couch together in unison. And I was like, "Wow, that's so spot on." And it's all about that affiliative pressure, and it's funny to me.
Yeah.
And like when I can say I can see people walking into a restaurant and I'm like, they're witnesses. How do you know?
Mhm.
I just know. You know,
Wow.
there's a behavior there. It is definitely a programmed behavior. And
Same with,
granted, what?
see, I could spot like Mormons or non-Mormons just by how they talk and behave.
Yeah,
I'm sure same with you with the witnesses.
yeah. There's a jargon. You know, there's a
Huh.
literally, and witnesses call it. They call it the pure language.
The pure language.
You know, and most
Uh,
high control groups have a pure language. You know, they have brother this, elder this,
yep, yep,
a special name that they've changed, giving you an identity to make sure you're always connected with that.
yep. In my church, I'm brother Hermano Ruiz.
Yeah, hermano Ruiz.
Spanish.
Yeah, see, no. In certain cultures, they call it hermanito. With little brother was that. And I remember talking to the guy. I'm like, listen, I got enough problems with people think I'm younger than what I am. Please stop calling me that. And
Yeah.
but that's what it was like in Peru. Those Peruanos did that. And so I was like, okay, well, we're not in Peru, are we? And so I don't know. Oh, that was kind of funny. But
Yeah. I guess.
we've been ranting a lot about different SI things and upbringing.
Hmm.
Uh,
I'll talk about the SC reality of Venezuela right now. Because
okay, you want to talk about Venezuela? Okay, wow. Okay, go ahead.
I guess, oh wow, it's already 9:08. We've been talking for what, an hour or more?
I don't think it's been that long.
Oh, okay. So Venezuela, Hugo Chavez was an ENFP for sure. Like just extremely charismatic, knew how to like paint this vision to everybody. I don't know if you've heard Hugo Chavez talk, but he always painted a lot of like abstract, metaphorical statements, and that just doesn't make sense. And people bought into all this crap and socialism. And then he passed away, and then he literally handpicked Nicolas Maduro, who I believe is an ESTJ, and he's just strictly following the orders of Chavismo, and this is what we're doing. And even though Trump and all of them wants to put sanctions against Venezuela to try to get him to step down, he's holding strong. And I'm thinking it's that SI parent that's enduring and
Yeah,
with sticking with this, and I guess he doesn't care or that millions are fleeing and that there's hyperinflation. People are dying of like diseases that could have been prevented had there been medicines, and there's shortages, and it's just a hot mess right now. And so it reminded me like what Chase talked about the philosophers. I'm thinking like the folks who are like Chavistas, people who follow Hugo Chavez, are the philosopher types. It's like, yeah, let's implement socialism. Oh, but we're gonna get the wealth here, and then they will. And so that's why, like, how the heck did these socialist leaders become billionaires if 90% of the country are below poverty? Like, it's just messed up.
because they got the Philosopher's Stone and they win.
That's their philosopher's stone. Yeah, socialism. And
uh,
then Trump is trying to take that away from them, but it's Russia's giving it to them, and Cuba and China and Turkey and the
yeah,
evil
I mean,
allies.
I'm living with a socialist right now, and he's a huge Bernie bro. And
Oh,
there are differences in different types of socialism, and things like that. And to throw him under the bus, he's an ENTJ, and he has no intentions on living under the system, and he knows ways to exploit the system.
yeah.
And so he's a lawyer already too, and so it's
Mhm.
like he already knows ways to get around everything anyway. So having these strict laws, they don't really affect NTs too much, just so you know that. So to find an NT who's pro-socialist or pro-communist, they know that they can break the system because they're going to
Mhm.
know the system, and they're going to figure out ways to pragmatically get around it.
Yeah.
And so, and when you're looking at that situation, the ideology makes a lot of sense, and you're like, well, that sounds okay because everything is this.
Like,
I don't want
yeah,
to get into
free
a huge.
house, free food, sure,
Correct.
but
And so, but when everyone has a free house, there's no value to it. So then it's just a house.
yep.
Granted, you can say that, but okay, well, you don't have any money with that house. There's no value. The houses are going to break down.
Hmm.
So how are you going to pay for it if you don't really have a job and things like that? Well, the community
Steal
bring it
from the
together.
rich.
Yeah, but the rich don't pay taxes, or if they, or they, a lot of people don't realize that when you're talking about a billionaire, they already paid their taxes. And so when you have people politically politicking, we're gonna tax the billionaires. Well, billionaires don't necessarily make $1 billion a year.
No, most of it is just assets. It's not
It's
cash.
assets. There's not really money to tax. So if
Exactly.
you look at Donald Trump, for instance, oh, they were making fun of him because he made 200 million one year.
Okay.
Okay. So, so when you hear the argument, we're going to tax billionaires and we're going to tax people who make more than $1 billion a year more. Who
Mhm.
does? No one does that.
Mhm.
So it's an empty promise. And so it's just like, I don't know anybody who's making $1 billion a year. I mean, if they do it, whatever. But if you're
Mhm.
thinking about starting a business, as most billionaires do, you say, oh, well, Amazon's not paying their wages enough. They're not doing this. Okay. Granted, that may be the case, but that's a moral argument. Okay. Because the workers are working there. Obviously, it's high enough or they wouldn't be working there.
Mhm.
Okay. So you're thinking about freedom of choice and things like that. And when it comes to systems and finance and things like that, you're seeing. I'm trying to be PC when I'm speaking. By the way, that's what's going on. F child is like you got to say these things in a certain way. Because there's a lot of liberals that watch my channel, so there's
Just be you, man. Say what you want to say. Who cares what they think?
say what you wanna say.
You're pragmatic too.
And well, anyways, just get that they already paid taxes.
Mhm.
They had to pay taxes on their buildings and their work and all this other stuff. And so, if you really want to bitch about billionaire things, you would have bitch about Bezos getting subsidized money from the federal. I'm not Federal Reserve. I'm sorry, the post office. That's
Mm,
unfair.
yeah.
Squash that. That's not fair. He's gonna be able to mail stuff cheaper than other people. That's not fair.
Wait, he's getting a subsidy from the U.S. Postal Service?
Yeah, you didn't know that? Look it up after we're
No, I
done.
had no idea.
Yeah, he gets to
That
ship stuff for
explains
cheaper. That's called insider trading. Anyways,
corruption.
so, and so yeah, the little things like that, those make sense. But I know I don't want to talk about taxes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what I wanted to get at with the Latin culture, and we got distracted with the Venezuelan thing, and I think I had a lot of pressure because my father is a roofer and a blue collar worker.
Mhm.
Um, I had a lot of pressure that Jehovah's Witness men work construction.
Okay.
Okay. And I know that culture pressure is, at least in the Mexican culture, to work with your hands because that's what real men do. Did you have that same pressure growing up?
Yes. I remember when I was 16 years old, like my dad, he does water installation. He always does stuff with his hands, and he was with another friend. And I think his friend asked him, like, hey, why doesn't your son come and help us out here? And my dad's like, oh, just let him be. And I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And then his friend came up to me and said, what, are you afraid of getting your hands dirty? Are you going to be a
Yeah.
woman and be like a girl and stay inside?
Yeah. And
It's
so,
just, it's like, yeah, that's what you belong. It's in the kitchen inside. Well, granted, I love cooking, but like he was calling me a girly girl. And I'm like, that's not cool. He's like, well, that's not cool that you don't want to get your hands dirty and help us out here and be a man.
ESTP?
So I think he is an ESTP. I
Sounds
think,
like one.
yeah.
Anyways. Yeah. And I remember that. And with me, when I was doing roofing with my family and things like that, I was always implied different systems that went against the grain of tradition in some ways.
Yeah.
And my dad is an ESFP, and he liked to speak from the standpoint where I've been doing this for 50 years. Listen to me, I have all the answers. No
Hmm.
ifs, ands, or buts. Um, that's kind of how it was. And it wasn't really until I started working with my brother, who didn't have that much seniority on me, because typically speaking, in a concrete society, seniority means a lot to SPs and SJs for that matter.
Yeah.
To me, seniority means absolutely nothing to me. I have no idea why that. You hear Chase talking about, so he's been in the company for 20 years, so he deserves the job. I didn't know people deserve anything. To me, everything is earned, and just because you were respectful 20 years ago doesn't mean you're respectful now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so,
It's about what they can give, not how long they've been there.
correct. And so,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I know that's not PC, and ageism is a thing, and I understand that's sad. Okay, that you
Yeah.
turn 50, you got too expensive, you get fired, and you can't find a job. That sucks.
Hmm.
SJ Society kept that from happening. And now SJ Society is crumbling down. And so now you see a lot of 50, 60-year-olds with no jobs, and they won't get work because no one wants to hire them. They're going to get sick more often. They have more health problems. They cost more, all this kind of stuff.
Yep,
And
yep.
yes, humans are getting a lot less useful. And I know this is, again, going back to NT, totalitarianism, very cold. And what can you produce? What can you give me? Is really how an NT mindset is. And that's sad. But it is what it is. And so to me, it was just like my dad's 50 years in the roofing industry made I didn't care, and so I kind of got treated like I'm disrespectful of this system of what's always been there. And I know, granted, I implemented the system. I just improved on it. Not necessarily approved on it, but I made it my way, I should say. Because I'm never as good as my father at roofing, SE demon, really. But uh, and to me, I mean, but you at least have SE ability, so you at least probably could learn a lot more. Like you said, you like to cook. That probably comes natural. Um,
Yeah.
to me, I was taught to cook from my upbringing from my mother. And I wonder if it's because my mother was 43 when she had me, and so she was already probably into her ENTP side of her mind at that point, and saw my potential in this sense. Because she taught, I mean, if you really look at me, like I was raised like a daughter. In all honesty, I learned how to sew, I learned how to cook, I knew how to clean by the time I was 7. And like,
Wow.
and I mean, I've been roommates with ESFPs, for instance. I had to teach them how to turn on a dishwasher, how to do laundry.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, well, how did you guys survive all the time? Because to me, chores was just a way of life. And yeah, I've always known how to clean, and do all the domestic skills and things like that. I don't know if it's because I was also a sickly child and I was always home. Uh, that could have been it. I don't know.
Who knows? No.
So,
I know with me, like like the Latino cultures, like especially the men, have to be macho.
yeah,
And I was always a nerd growing up. And so when you guys typed to me as ESFP, I'm like, wait, what? Because I've
yeah,
taken the test and I've gotten the ESFP before, and I'm just like, oh, this is the wrong test. So I'm like, okay, I'll run with ENFP, just because when you picture ESFPs, you picture like this, or ESTPs or whatever, this macho tough guy, and I wasn't really like that.
yeah. Well, it seems like your father protected you.
Yeah, he was really overprotecting of us when we were little growing up.
Well, no, it's something about, I don't know. He had a different mentality on that, like almost like a futuristic. This is what Vic wants, type of thing. So you mentioned INFP as a possibility, and that could make sense just the way he responded quickly like that. Oh, it's okay. He
Hmm.
doesn't need to do this, and putting your feelings ahead in some ways with that.
Which is weird because when I was 9 years old, I loved playing basketball, but I sucked at it. And so my dad put me in this basketball thing, and all the kids were running faster than me, making those shots, and I couldn't make the shots for the life of me. And my dad's like, "This is not going to work out," and so he took me out. Never got to be a good basketball player. So I'm wondering if that's
I
his
hate
end.
basketball so much.
Good.
I don't like team sports. I never ever did. I was always, basketball was so, and again, systems, inconsistencies. The foul
Yeah.
rule is just seems unfair to me, and it seems
Hmm.
whimsical. Like, let's just call foul, and it's this time it's okay, but that time it's not. NT black
Yeah.
and white thinking. Basketball is stupid because it's not consistent. The system's not there. It seems like it's mostly based on what the ref wants to call. And to me, that also leads to NE going crazy and like, wow, this is going to be really rigged. There's going to be a lot of betting involved. There's going to be a lot of stuff and all this kind of stuff. So I'm so I'm just like, I can't stand it. And then it's also sweatiness and guys on you and stuff. It's gross. But
Yeah, I don't mind that as much. It's
that's
whatever.
the SE thing. You guys like that, like let's all have that group love and group dynamic and everyone's, guys, I think of SPs, I think of sports bars, I think of taverns, I think of places where
Yeah.
people can get together and have chit chat and talk and have beer and everyone's like having a good time. And I like that stuff too,
Uh-huh.
but it seems like SPs enjoyed a lot more.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and so it's just like, and you take that away, that's a big deal to them, and
Yeah.
uh, but that's the system in basketball I can't stand. And but yeah, it seems like your dad protected you and allowed you to be different.
Yeah, because like he grew up being the number one top kid in his high school class, and he got into college, and then he knocked up a woman and got her pregnant, and so he had to drop out of school, and so he doesn't want me to make the same mistakes, so he always like pushed me to be more academic, study more, and go to college, and now I have a master's degree, even though school is hard for me. I had to like pretend like, oh, my grades are good, and they weren't. Like I had really awful grades. I don't know how I passed any of my classes.
Yeah.
I guess it's that to each child, right? That can give the perception that they're smart.
Yeah, well, no, it's not about smartness when it comes to academia or anything. It's about following rules.
Yeah.
Can you follow the part? Can you keep your lines in the right margins and all this other nonsense that makes no sense to me? Again, philosopher's stone, I win. Uh,
So I
this is
wonder if he wanted to turn me into his philosopher's stone. Like, okay, my
possibly.
son will be an engineer making a lot of money, and then I can retire and live off of him. I don't know if that's his mindset, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just what I was getting at is your father sounds like a very wise man to me. Um,
Yeah, he's
he
definitely
definitely
very wise.
saw the future somewhere along that. Granted, top person in class doesn't sound very INFP-ish, but who knows? That sounds more
He
like an
said he was.
ESTJ, which is the
Yeah,
ideal man. That's everyone's favorite man.
maybe my dad is an INFP focused ESTJ. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
what.
Again, we don't type based on stereotypes. We type based on
Uh,
what his interaction style is and what his temperament is and
if
things
we're
like
going
that.
off of stereotype, I'm an INTP, INTJ. Instead of this, go to the bar and party and whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. ESFPs are just such a versatile type, and so there's not really a stereotype for it. Now,
Are you?
granted, there's a very bias in the MBTI community against concrete types, and so you'll see the
Yeah, I don't like
negatives.
that.
Um,
They
which,
demonize us.
well, I mean, look at who gets into this. Most people are hurt, damaged, and emotionally insane. Let's just be honest.
The
And
fake INFJs.
the fake INFJs who are really ISFJs, and so it's just like.
Yeah.
And they're just bitter. This is what happened in my past, and I'm going to hold it against everyone else. Like, whoa, calm down.
Hmm.
And this is how it works. But when it comes to upbringing, it definitely influences who we are, and that's kind of what I wanted to bring you on this show for, to see a different side of light of an ESFP.
Yeah.
Approved by everyone else, but
Keep taking us
up
on tangents.
correct. You're right. And it's fine, but it's just like that's a good thing, because when you think of ESFPs, we think in wide receivers on the football team, and so like, oh, everyone's
Hmm.
gonna act like Terrell Owens. No,
No.
but are there ESFPs that act that way? Most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. And so when you see the people lashing out against the Wayfarer video, for instance, and
Oh yeah. All
this
that
is not any
drama.
of us, I'm just like, well,
One particular ESFP was mad in the group, and he
yeah.
left this long message.
Yeah. Well, it's like, hey, you got Paris Hilton, you got the Kardashians, you got Donald Trump, you got Hillary Clinton,
Mhm.
you got all of these wayfarers that all are acting like that, or Zuckerberg, for instance, INTJ.
Oh, yep.
And you can't say it doesn't exist when it's right there in your face. You're like, literally, your Quadra runs reality TV. Hands
Really
down,
does.
it runs reality TV. And so you got what's that, the Bad Girls Club? That's all ESFP girls, running around like like over and over again. And it is what it is. That's
Mhm.
fine. But then there's this side of ESFPs, and you have the person who grows up in a Latin culture, who's an immigrant, essentially, in a nation that's different. All of this matters in who we are as a person,
Mhm.
because we talk about nature all day long, how we're wired, SE hero, FI parent, TE child, NI inferior, manifests its ways much differently depending on how it was raised. And so
Mhm.
that's what I wanted to bring this out was, yeah, then you have me, my upbringing, Jehovah's Witness upbringing,
Yeah.
definitely really affects me. And people were like, well, you're not fitting the ENTP stereotype, and so you're not one. Vic isn't fitting the
BS.
ESFP stereotype, so he's not one. I'm like, okay, well, let's keep typing off memes. Okay.
Like there
And
was that INTJ guy that thought I was the INFP, and he like blocked me and a bunch of people in the group.
oh, I'm gonna meet him eventually when I get back to Hungary.
What's his name? Philippe Van Tauta or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, with this hat.
I don't know why he blocked me. I didn't really say anything bad, but
Although Robert says he's an ENFP, but I'll decide that one day when I meet him.
yeah. I've heard
Uh,
some of his like podcasts and stuff, and like he's pretty successful. He's got like successful people that he interviews with, and he's got a full website and a Facebook group with like 1,000 people. And
yeah, I mean, I've listened to his podcast too, and I didn't see anything really to suggest it wasn't an INFJ. I mean, INTJ.
so Philippe, if you're seeing this video, please unblock me.
I wonder if he does watch my channel. I don't know if he does or not. He's not blocked me. He likes me, and we're
You're
cool. I mean, he's from Belgium, but he lives in Hungary. So it's a lot of different influence, different culture there. Like I mentioned,
Yeah.
if you're typing him based on American bias, INTJ, and then you don't know anything about European culture, you can jump to conclusions. And so with me, I'm semi-familiar with Venezuelan culture, semi-familiar with a lot of Latin culture. I'm definitely familiar with high control group religion culture.
Yeah.
And so I can see, I can reject that stuff when I'm speaking with you just
Yeah.
because of life experience. And when you see people like C.S. Joseph, let's just face it, he's lived in California and he's lived in Washington.
Hmm.
So his SI is based on those two things and always in metropolitan areas.
Yeah. So he's got his own perspective on.
A very own perspective. Now, granted, I have those same perspective. I've lived in the exact same two areas in
Have
the
you
United
met him in
States.
person?
Yeah, I have. He's an
Oh,
ENTP. I mean, listen to anybody.
I want to
People are.
meet him in person one day.
Yeah, he's great. He walked in super awkward, like SI inferior. Kind of just like sat down and stared at everybody for a while, and like I was just like, "Are you gonna say something?" And like it just took a while till he's got comfortable. And he's like, "Oh, I like to listen to other people first." Real kind of shy in person when we first sat down, and we were just like chatting around in a circle, and then he eventually opened up after he kind of figured it out, because that's what
Interesting.
ENTPs do. We walk into the room and case out the joint. What are potential dangers here? What are potential possibilities here? What are these people going to do?
Yeah,
And
when I
that's,
walk in a room, I feel shy as well. I'm like, oh, what am I gonna say or do? What are these guys gonna think of me? And
yeah,
yeah, same thing. It's like, am I gonna come across as too intense, too strong? Are they gonna think I'm weird? Are they gonna think I'm cool? I don't know. It's what do I say? And I have all these things running in my head as well when I'm around new people.
I think it's like, what do you want to do?
Yeah,
That's what's antagonizing you. What am I wanting to do here?
I'm so indecisive. It's like I want this, I want this. I don't know whether should I do this, should I do that, and
Yeah.
I guess it's an NI inferior that's afraid of what it wants.
Correct. And ENTPs can be similar too, because it's NI and nemesis is worried about what I want to do here.
Hmm.
Because you need to figure out what the possibilities are, because any kind of action is going to affect what happens. And so with you, it's what's happening right now. Enter a room, I see what everyone is doing. What do I want to do in this situation? So it's a different type of casing out the joint. Mine is what's going to happen. I don't give a damn what people are doing right now. I'm just going to take in the information and see what's going to happen. Do I want to be here? And so when I think of ESFPs, it's like they come to a party, either it's hopping or it's not.
Hmm.
And so if it's not hopping when they get there, they either say, do I want to make this better or do I want to leave?
Yeah, that's me at like Latino dance parties. I went to Venezuela actually to visit back in 2013. And my cousin, I think she's also an ESFP, very popular girl. And so we went to this dance party and there was music playing, but no one was dancing. Maybe just a few people were up there dancing. And I'm like, I'm in a different country here. I want to experience this dancing thing. And so I asked some girls out to dance and nobody was in the mood. And it was just really awkward. I'm like, this is
Really?
lame. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm in Venezuela. Isn't this supposed to be the party country? And
It
then,
it can be. Um, my best friend and Joe's witness, his mother was from Venezuela, but
uh,
technically she was from Trinidad, but their family emigrated from Trinidad to Venezuela, and that's kind of where she grew up. And then she came to the United States as a teenager, and long story, but
okay.
um, she's probably an ISTJ, so sweet woman, but definitely had could be a stick in the mud sometimes. But that's the way it is, and so that's the whole reason I brought you on here, was for that reason. You definitely brought up another points that really digress, but I think that should be salad for another video, because I don't think people like these long videos.
Sure, they should be like shorter, right? Like half hour, 45 minutes instead of 2 hours.
Well, I haven't made a 2-hour video yet, besides my coming out video of what my life was.
Mm.
uh that's an hour and a half. Yeah, the ENTJ, he won't watch any of these things. He 10 minutes less, triple control. Don't waste my time. My time is precious.
Sounds
Uh,
like my wife. I wonder if my wife's an ENTJ. No, I don't think so.
Stop doing that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
no, definitely. And when it comes to this channel, and anybody can just literally send me a message and say, "Hey, I have this idea. Let's talk about this." And that's what I wanted. That's why I did the whole meetup thing. Was all about opening up everybody's idea,
Oh yeah.
versus someone. I just didn't want to be another YouTube person just preaching at people. There's enough of that.
Right.
And so to have a place where it's open communication, where people can have conversations, and we can meet different people in faces like that. And so for the people who don't know how to type, for the people who just raised on stereotypes, now they can look at videos such as this, where you see literally interactions. You get to know these people based on just some 2 paragraphs of words. Oh, this is the way this type is. That's all fun and games in short sense, but let's actually see how they interact with each other.
Yeah.
And you can even look at this and say, hey, I'm an ESFP. Do I want to date an ENTP? What's their conversation going to be like this? And so
A lot of talking.
a lot of
What I'm
talking,
picturing.
a lot of back and forth, a lot of in and out of shadow, so if we were younger, I think we get on each other's nerves a lot, because both of us would want to dominate. But when you got older and you've matured and you've exercised the ISFJ side, you exercise the INTJ side, which is kind of funny. We both have the same boxes, but it just flipped. I just now pieced that together right there. I'm like, oh wow, it just flipped. Okay, because you're super, yeah. Because remember, my super ego is you, and your super ego is me.
Yeah, that's true. How we're each other's demons.
so,
That's funny.
so we'll finish off on that. So that's kind of funny. That's kind of how my whole idea on that. And so, yeah, granted, you got any other ideas? We talked about how influence of Venezuelan culture, Mormon culture, we got my witness culture influencing me. My dad's a blue collar worker influenced me.
Mhm.
I had to learn to do construction whether I wanted to or not. I had to learn how to use my FE child a lot. Everything was about that. And I imagine, on one little side tangent before I leave,
Mhm.
did you feel that your FI parent was repressed due to the fact that your morality was given to you?
In some respects, yes. To make a long story short, I was deeply conflicted because, like, the Mormon church taught that I was supposed to be this way, and then I had my own morals that I wanted to be this way. And then the woman that I wanted to look for to date, thankfully I have her now, had this, like, yeah, the kind of morals and quality that I looked for is conflicted with what the church wanted. And it's, yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, conflict.
so and so people are like, how do you figure this stuff out? I'm like, I don't know, because if that, then this. And so if you I don't
Yeah,
understand FI. I'll be honest with you. Coming
I
up with
don't.
my own moral code means it's just absolutely idiotic to me, because morals are already idiotic to begin with, but I accept it because of FE child, and I'm just like running around, and this is the way this community thinks, this is the way this religion thinks, this is how everyone says right and wrong in this case.
Mhm.
And to me, I get in a lot of arguments like this in our philosophy group when they're literally the subject is what is evil. There is no such thing as evil to me.
Yeah, you're like, this is all subjective.
It's all subjective because what you consider evil is completely subjective about who you are, where you grew up, what you're around, and what you've read.
Exactly.
And so, I've traveled the world, you know. It's just like, that's why I say I think travel is the best medicine for ignorance. I always recommend that, and people say, well, I'm gonna read this book, but that's not the same thing. And
I'm reading
so,
this. Well, okay, I can't see it.
no, it wouldn't disappeared. Oh, there.
Oh, that stupid
I
virtual.
saw your picture in the group, so I know what it was. It's the Zungiger?
Hunziker?
Hunziker.
I'm gonna get rid of this virtual screen. I'm in my daughter's room. That one.
We all know that's your room.
Yeah. It's my hiding room, my refuge spot.
We always know your ESFP girls like to just party and wear pink and all the other nonsense. So
My little 1-year-old.
and so yeah. So as your daughter gets older, you know, as a teacher, let me just get this out real quick and then we'll end this.
Okay.
The funny thing about typing children is it's hard to type them based on more than interaction styles and more on temperaments. Look for their tricksters, look for their child functions, because those kind of develop pretty quickly. And so a lot of my typing, and I know I promised in the group to share some videos from my classroom with people, and like I can tell when someone's an ISFJ because I see the TH trickster. Bam, you know, and I'm like, huh? It's so adorable too. It's super cute, but that is what it is. But thanks, Vivek, for coming on. And I think a lot of XJWs will actually watch this video because there's a connection with Mormons and XJWs in that sense. And if you look at any kind of like apostate channels on YouTube that are XJW or even ex-Mormons, they usually interview each other.
Yeah, John DeLynn interviewed the XJW guy that Chase typed. I forgot what his name was.
Lloyd Evans.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I paid for that, by the way.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I paid for Lloyd Evans to be
You
typed.
would.
Yeah, and so I wanted to. And the problem was I was pretty new to typing then, and I looked at him and I'm like, oh, this guy's an INTP.
And then he's like, nope, ESTJ.
And I'm like, well, why the hell does he look like crap? And crap, I shouldn't say that. Lloyd, I'm sorry, I love you. Anyways, I met him in person. He's a really nice guy. And his wife is an ISFJ. I typed her. And so when you see relationships of SJ, SJ, that whole stereotyping of SJs look and dress well goes out the window because they don't have the SE user demanding it. Okay. And so, so when you got SJ, SI parent and SI hero in the same household, what are they going to do? What's comfortable?
Yeah.
You know, and now granted, an ISTP wife, you know, with an ESTJ man would be like, no, sorry, you know, I'm going to SE parent you all the time. You're not wearing Star Wars shirts at 40 years of age. You know, it's absolutely inappropriate for a man your age to be wearing a Star Wars shirt all the time. Maybe at a Star Wars convention, sure, you know, or something like that. That's kind of how I picture SE parent in my mind, by the way. But
see that.
Yeah, you look you look immature is what she's going to say to him. But if you have an ISFJ, she doesn't care.
Right, because she cares about her own experiences.
Yeah, so it's just like whatever, you know. So it's comfort. Anyways, I gotta stop this. All right, this is way too long. Stop.